Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jamie Moore and I am the brand journalist here at FrankCrum. Today's webinar is on correcting course and learning the best practices for addressing employee behavior. If you would like to submit a question, you may do so in the box on the right side of your screen. Now I know many of our FrankCrum clients are attending today, and I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you for your business. We sincerely appreciate it. For those who are not clients, welcome. I would like to start with a very brief overview of our business, and then I will introduce our presenter. FrankCrum is a family-owned professional employer organization, or PEO, located in beautiful Clearwater, Florida. This year marks our 38th year in business. At FrankCrum, we enable clients to outsource aspects of human resources, employee benefits, payroll and payroll taxes, and workers' compensation insurance. As a result, our clients have more time to focus on maintaining and growing their bottom line. Now let's get started. FrankCrum's Labor Compliance Manager, Tanya Fletcher, will present today's webinar. Tanya is a certified senior professional in human resources with a background in human resource management and expertise in increasing organizational effectiveness. She oversees FrankAdvice, a premium HR consulting service, and manages the delivery and content of best practice information to client owners and managers regarding all types of employment-related topics. FrankAdvice can also provide assistance with job descriptions, company policies, and wage and hour topics, just as some examples. Take it away, Tanya.
Thank you, Jamie. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Correcting Course, Best Practices for Addressing Employee Behavior. Just a note before we begin, our webinar this afternoon is provided for informational purposes and is not intended to be legal advice. So let's get started with our topic. We wish there weren't any problems we have to address with our employees, but sometimes there are. Today, we're going to set a good foundation for handling employee relations issues because we want you to have the confidence and knowledge to successfully handle this responsibility. Corrective action is a process of communicating with the employee in an effort to get them to improve. The goal is to focus on solving the problem, not punishing the employee. This is one of the more difficult and uncomfortable responsibilities a manager has, and after this training, I hope you'll feel much more comfortable because you've learned a very objective, common sense, and non-personal attack type of approach. Today you will learn the importance of constructive corrective action. Sometimes I'm asked, what about employment at will? Why can't I just fire this person? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you always should. Is there any benefit to maintaining the employment relationship versus simply letting the employee go? Today we'll talk about why you should take corrective action. We'll also talk about when to take corrective action. You want to deliver corrective action with the confidence that you've done your due diligence. Don't rush to judgment or action. If an employee's late and they're walking in the door, you rush over to meet them. That's it, I've had it, you're fired. The employee says, well, wait, I was in a car accident and I've spent the last couple of hours in the hospital. See my broken arm in this cast? Now maybe they could have used their own broken arm to get their phone and text or call you, but really, is this the best way to handle this situation? We're going to go over the steps in the corrective action process. We'll consider how to identify the problem and take appropriate action to productively address ongoing concerns. We'll talk about formal and informal consequences and how to consider formal consequences as appropriate. We'll go over the corrective action options from verbal warnings to written corrective action up to termination of employment. We will review how to conduct an effective meeting with your employee. You need to tell the employee what they're doing wrong, what they need to do, and what can happen if they do not improve. We'll review how to plan for a productive meeting to discuss a serious issue, how to conduct that meeting, and after the meeting, identify the follow-up steps you need to take. And finally, how to minimize the negative impact on you and your company. Performance, attendance, conduct issues can have a serious impact. Today, we'll talk about how you might handle these serious situations to minimize the negative impact on you, your work group or department, and your company. So why do corrective action? We want to improve unacceptable behavior or performance and retain the employee. You hired the employee, spent time training them. You want to get them back on track and want them to be a productive and successful individual. Longevity of staff is good for customer perception as well as recruitment of new employees. The goal is to assist your employee in meeting job expectations. The aim is to guide the employee to correct the issue, not punish them. to best ensure equitable treatment and a sense of fairness. Most employees want to do a good job. Maybe they're not fully understanding of the problem or not taking your coaching or counseling seriously. Perhaps they've not been fully trained or feel another department priority is more important. You want to be as fair and as consistent as possible. 2 employees are late every Friday with their weekly report. Same reason. Oh, I forgot about it. 1 you haven't talked to, 1's been written up. You need to be as consistent as possible. And thirdly, to help protect you and your company. You want to minimize the negative impact of the situation and reduce the potential risk to the company. You want to document what is happening and your response to help the employee fix the problem. If you need to move to dismissal and terminate employment, you want to know that you've done what you could for the employee and they did not do what was needed to meet minimum job expectations. Corrective action and documentation can also help reduce the risk of losing unemployment claims or lawsuits that might be brought against your company. So ask yourself, as a manager, have there been times you jumped the gun and discussed or delivered corrective action too soon? Maybe you didn't do your due diligence, you talked with the employee and realized you didn't have all your facts straight, or you did not objectively look at the situation, take certain factors into account. Maybe they were having computer issues and that is why their report was late. Conversely, have there been times you waited too long to deliver corrective action? Maybe you're too busy. You thought there were bigger problems. There's critical work to get done. Maybe this problem will take care of itself. If the employee doesn't work out, you don't know if there's room in the budget to replace the position. Better the devil you know than getting someone else you don't. Maybe you missed some clues. Decreased engagement, an increase in absenteeism or tardiness, lowered productivity, an increase in complaints from customers or other employees, turnover, an increase in employees leaving the company. Or you waited too long to deliver corrective action because you want your direct reports to like you. It isn't fun to take corrective action. You want to be seen as a nice boss, right? However, not taking action can suggest to other employees that the situation is okay and tolerated, that you're playing favorites, or that you're incapable of addressing or handling the situation. So let's start with your day-to-day. You're not just going to talk with an employee when there's a problem. Coaching and communication is an ongoing daily activity. Think of a coach on a baseball field. Where is he when the team is on the field? On the sidelines, giving instructions, offering encouragement, motivating his team. He doesn't take things over, run out and grab the bat. He might run out and yell at the umpire, but he provides advice and support. He coaches his team. Coaching drives engagement. Receiving timely and fair coaching makes employees feel valued. Coaching also allows you to build your reputation as developing others, increases productivity, makes it easier for you, gives you more time, you can delegate things. It can also help you address many concerns before they develop into bigger, more serious issues. There are 2 types of coaching. Coaching for success, and this is done proactively. Before employees handle a new task, or if they're working through a challenging situation, they're learning a new skill, using new equipment, working with new partners. And coaching for improvement. This is done reactively to correct behavior or performance concerns, such as missing work, using the internet for non-work purposes, not hitting sales targets, going over budget on a project, receiving customer complaints. Coaching for improvement is informal communication. Although informal, it's best practices to make a note and document that you've coached for improvement. The formal communication and consequences come with corrective action. Communicate your concerns up front instead of waiting until the problem can no longer be tolerated. Some examples of coaching for improvement are, for a restaurant server, I saw that you were late 2 times this week for your shift. I want you to be on time. For a receptionist, I need you to be focused on work during working time and to shop online at Target on your break. For a production supervisor, your department had 2 safety incidents in the last couple of weeks. This concerns me. I want you to review what happened and come up with a plan that we can discuss at our one-on-one meeting on Friday. So when should we move from coaching to corrective action? When there's a serious or ongoing problem that needs to be addressed. You should consider corrective action when there's a negative impact or the potential for the problem to turn into a bigger issue. When there's workplace misconduct or rules violations, when there's continued failure to properly perform tasks. There are also times when immediate action is needed depending on the nature and severity of the problem. When expectations have been clearly communicated. The employee knows or should know what to do or not do. Company policies and procedures are clear. Job duties are defined. When it is timely. What is happening right now? You know that negative comment you made in the staff meeting 6 months ago? As a manager, you should address issues at the right time and be timely in your handling of an issue, not months later. Now, what if your employee told you yesterday they've just been diagnosed with cancer and will need to take some time off for surgery? Or they had a workers' comp this week, and you decided that you need to address their performance deficiencies that you never have before. It's going to look like retaliation, right? It doesn't mean that the employee is allowed to get away with things. If you'd been addressing all along, you still could. But if you haven't been addressing an issue and now you want to right on the heels of a medical situation similar to the aforementioned examples, that is a risk. Reach out for expert advice. And finally, when previous coaching and corrective action efforts have not been successful. Corrective action is formal consequences. You begin to formally address when there are chronic performance issues or serious misconduct, continuing to fall short of production standards, violating a major safety rule, harassing a coworker. So we think we need to take corrective action. These are our corrective action steps. Identify the problem, determine the corrective action, document and communicate, and meet and follow up. But first, we need to do some due diligence. Let's take a close look at this. It's important to know everything possible about the information you have. How did you acquire it? What pieces of the information are objective versus subjective? What's hearsay and what's fact? Start with confirming what you really know and ask, what can I actually see, hear, measure? What are the things I could have this person do or stop doing that would convince me they've solved the problem? Is it performance, attendance, conduct? Conduct your analysis further by asking questions such as, what is the impact of this activity on the business? Does the employee know the activity should not occur? Does the employee know what is supposed to be done and when? Was appropriate training and orientation conducted? Are there obstacles beyond the employee's control? What factors may be contributing to the situation? Does the employee know how to perform the desired activity correctly? Does a negative consequence follow performance? Does a positive consequence follow non-performance? You break the dishes, you don't have to do the dishes anymore, right? Is the employee willing and capable of performing and or behaving as expected? And what do I anticipate the employee's thoughts and comments to be? Determine the type of corrective action by asking questions such as, how serious is the event? What is the employee's history with the company? Is this employee within their first 90 days of employment, or have they been there for several years? Have there been problems similar or not in the past with this employee? Has the employee been allowed to tell his or her account of the activity, and are those comments noted? If someone's always late, and it's morning sickness, okay, maybe you need to accommodate. Or, maybe they tell you they're late because they just got a cat. Every time they open the door, the cat runs out. They have to chase it down the street. Not really a good reason to be late. So what proof exists that the activity occurred? The employee said they're going to be late this time because they got a nail in their tire. Should I ask them to take a picture of the tire to send to me? Well, we don't need to do that. With proof that they were late. How do you know they were late? You saw them walking in late, they clocked in late. When you went to look for them at starting time, they were nowhere to be found. When it comes to proof, are we comfortable that we have good evidence? Sometimes factual evidence may not be available, so you have to make a determination based on the preponderance of evidence, which is making the determination that certain information is more likely true than not. Be sure to examine all the information you have, notes, logs, witness statements, documents, emails. And if needed, have witnesses been interviewed and their statements documented and signed? Has the investigation been thorough, objective, timely, and completed with the appropriate personnel regardless of how the situation first appears? Has the organization enforced rules and standards consistently? How have other employees in similar situations been treated? Has the employee been referred to an employee assistance program if appropriate? Does the corrective measure fit the infraction? Is the employee aware of the grievance policy? And what must the employee do to correct their performance, attendance, or conduct issue? Now, after our analysis is complete, our corrective action options include verbal warning. This consists of a discussion with the employee that clearly states that a problem exists, clarifies expectations, and outlines the consequences of not correcting the problem. Though it is a verbal warning, the discussion should be documented, even if it's just a note that you make. It's a sit-down meeting. You need to tell the employee what they're doing wrong, what they need to do, and what can happen if they do not improve. You want to check for understanding with the employee, and if they seem uncertain of the advice being given, you should reiterate. You could also follow up with an email to them afterward, recapping your conversation if you wanted. Written warning. This is a document they're expected to sign, acknowledging that they've been talked to and understand the expectations, and is placed in their file. The document will note what the issue is that needs to be corrected, and that immediate, significant, and consistent improvement is necessary to avoid additional corrective action. You'll also review these matters on an ongoing basis. Leave. This is an option that you could use in a few specific situations. It could be suspension. Maybe you have to do an investigation, theft, falsification of documents, harassment, if you need them to be out of the office. It could be decision-making leave. And decision-making leave is where the employee is informed in writing what the problem is, and that they are being given a few hours of paid leave to consider what action they need to take to resolve the problem. The employee has a meeting with the manager immediately upon returning to work after the paid leave period ends to discuss what the employee would like to do. The employee has a few choices at this point. Respond to the deficiencies in writing with the steps they will take toward resolution, resign from employment, or do nothing and let the employer take action. And lastly, dismissal, termination of employment. This should be used as a last resort or when responding to a very serious infraction of the employer's rules, or when it's necessary to protect the health, safety, or welfare of other interested parties. There may be times when you move right to a more serious corrective action option. If there's a safety violation, maybe it's a written warning instead of a verbal warning. Theft, physical violence, you move right to dismissal. Okay, our first case study. We have Maria, who is an administrative assistant. And Maria's been with the company for 60 days. Last month, she made a couple of errors with her data entry. You talked with her and she agreed to do better. This week, she made 2 more errors, one of them resulting in a client complaint. You also asked her to enter an expense report for you, and she said that it was complete and would be paid on the next check. However, it was not submitted in time for this week's payroll, and you did not get any money. Today, you also discovered that Maria did not pay a vendor invoice. So what is the issue or issues, and what action should be taken? Right, it's performance. So what is the impact of this on the business? How bad were the errors? Is it a typo of a missing vowel or a wrong dollar amount entered? We know one resulted in a client complaint. You didn't get your money for your expense report. Okay, you wanted to go shopping this weekend with that money, but you're going to be professional and objective as you analyze the situation. Does the employee know what's supposed to be done and when? Do they know how to do it correctly? What is the employee's history? You talked with Maria previously and she agreed to do better. Her tenure? She's still new. She hasn't been with the company for a long time. Has she been allowed to tell her account? She said the expense report was complete. Did she think it was because she hit submit, but it didn't go through? Was she going to do it later, but she forgot? Or did she just say it was complete and didn't care that it wasn't? And why wasn't that vendor invoice not paid? So your options can include verbal or written warning. Maybe she needs some more training, more coaching. See how she does this next month. She definitely needs to double check her work and stay organized. And maybe you could spot check if she's new, have regular one-on-ones with her. All right, Dan is a front desk clerk and he's been at our hotel for 2 years. Right now, he's not meeting job expectations. He's not converting enough walk-in business. Last week, he received a low rating on a guest survey. And this week, he double booked a meeting room. He's always been a good employee, but you know his father died recently. So what is the issue or issues, and what action should be taken? Yes, more performance issues. We know Dan has been there for 2 years. so it does not seem to be an orientation or a training issue. He knows what to do. His history, he's been a good employee in the past. So some questions we need to ask. What is the impact? It's an impact to revenue if he's not converting enough walk-in business. Unhappy guests. What factors may be contributing to the situation? His father died recently. Did he take some bereavement days? Does he need a few more days off? Maybe a good idea for him to take some vacation time. You could offer the employee assistance program to him. Is the employee willing and capable of performing as expected? And depending on the details of the guest survey and what Dan says to you when you touch base with him, it could be coaching for improvement or a verbal warning. It could also be a written warning or other if, when you talk to Dan, he's like, haha, I don't care, I overbooked all the meeting rooms for next week too. Then that would be a more serious conversation. We care about our employees and we want to look at all the aspects, but when they're at work, we do need them to meet minimum expectations. Lisa, our project manager. Lisa's been with the company for a year and has a history of speaking down to others, expressing frustration over challenges, and ignoring work requests. You've spoken with her before, and while her behavior will improve for a short while, eventually she will revert to her old ways. You've recently learned that she sent an abrupt, unprofessional email asking for information from a team lead and was heard cussing loudly at the end of a personal call. During today's monthly team meeting, when the team was reviewing the complexity of the systems in the quality assurance process, she muttered, well, this is a waste of an hour of my life. Additionally, 2 project deliverables for this month are late. So what is the issue or issues here, and what action should be taken? Right, performance and conduct this time. So what is the impact of this? Professionalism? Morale? Even if it was bad news on the personal call, cussing loudly where others could hear was not appropriate. Work is not getting done on time. She said the team meeting was a waste of time. As a manager, she's held to a higher standard. It was a distraction and a disruption. It kept the team from focusing on solutions and understanding the quality assurance process. What proof is there that the activity occurred? Who overheard or witnessed the comment at the team meeting? Were you there? Who heard the cussing at the end of the personal call? We could also offer her the EAP, Employee Assistance Program, which is a resource available to all associates for personal and work-life challenges. So ask yourself, what do you anticipate the employee's thoughts and comments to be? How have other employees in similar situations been treated? And has the organization enforced rules and standards consistently? So our corrective action options include written warning, decision-making leave. She's not happy. Is she willing and capable of performing and or behaving as expected? Is this the right role for her? She has a choice. She needs to change her behavior and meet performance and conduct expectations. Dismissal. You've spoken with her before. What's documented? What are the previous warnings? How serious is this ongoing situation? You need someone who can lead the team and deliver the project. Now, if it's not documented, it can turn into he said, she said. So why should we document? For a few reasons. For the record. You want to develop a record to support the action that you're taking. Documentation will help you build a strong case for improvement or the need for additional corrective action. Documentation can help with consistency. What happened in the past with another employee who had the same issue? It will also help with what happened in the past with this employee. You'll want to look at the employee file for history when considering corrective action. If you leave, the next manager can look at the file and take over. The new manager sees that last year in the personnel file, the employee received a written warning for getting a speeding ticket while driving the company truck, and now we have another speeding ticket. Documentation is important for yourself. First, as a resource to aid the discussion in the employee meeting. You can be prepared with specific examples each time you discuss the concern. Not only will you be able to focus the conversation on specific examples, you'll also be ready to respond to objections with clearly documented facts. Second, you want documentation for yourself to use as a measurement of how the employee is doing. The starting point to now. If the goal is a reduction in errors, 10 errors last month, 2 errors this month. Okay, we're trending in the right direction. Documentation is also important for the employee. As above for you, it helps them with your counseling and measurement of how they're doing. Documentation is important for clarity of expectations. People have a right to know what's expected of them. This crucial information should be documented and mutually agreed upon to build trust. For example, the employee needs to know the expectation for the weekly report. I need the weekly client call-in report with the number of calls and types of requests every Friday by noon. That's pretty clear. For others, your boss, HR, legal, if a report is wrong and your boss wants to know why, you can tell them and let them know the actions you've taken to address the situation. Documentation is important for legal purposes. You might be thinking, this is the worst employee ever. I'm never going to forget this situation. But are you going to remember every detail months or even years later? I worked with a manager previously discussing corrective action he wanted to take with his employee. He shared his documentation with me. He had specific examples, dates, details of the coaching he'd done. I was like, nice, good documentation. He's like, yeah, I got burned a while back. Best practices for documentation include remembering to use spell check and good business writing techniques. Don't use subjective statements like has a bad attitude. Be objective and write about the facts. She slammed the phone down on the receiver, or he stated that he was angry with his coworker, are better instead of has a bad attitude. You always want to remember that a jury, an attorney, the EEOC, or a local newspaper someday could be reading your documentation, and it will either reflect poorly or it will read well and place you in a good defensive posture. Part of being a manager is giving feedback, and it's important to do this in an effective manner. So let's say you have an employee called John, and you say, John, you're too abrasive, you aren't flexible, and you ruffle people's feathers. Stop it. So John goes home and thinks about this feedback that you've given him. Comes in the next day wearing a softer shirt, so he's not too abrasive. He's enrolled in a yoga class, so he can be more flexible. And if he finds himself standing next to someone with feathers, he shouldn't blow on them. Now, how well was the message you communicated received? General statements do not make for good feedback. Be specific. If an employee has an attendance issue, I was only late once or twice, they say. No, you were late 3 times in the last 2 weeks by more than 20 minutes without communicating with me, and these are the dates. Supportive. You don't want to say, you idiot, a 5-year-old could do this task. Be supportive. This is what we need. How can we achieve that? I understand it can be difficult. Where do you want to start? Sequential. It needs to be timely communication. When you see it, informal feedback, or you could have a weekly, bi-weekly one-on-one. If an employee is written up, but there's no follow-up or communication, they ask themselves, how am I doing? I hope I won't be fired. And lastly, secluded. Congratulating conversations can be out in the open. Nice job, way to go. But for counseling or corrective action, it needs to be private. We've identified the problem and determined the corrective action we want to take. We know the importance of documentation and communication. And now we're ready to plan for the meeting with the employee. You want to plan ahead before talking with your employee. You don't want to rush to judgment or action, and you should never do corrective action when you're angry. You need to be calm and professional. You shouldn't just walk into the meeting with the employee without preparation. First, gather your facts, your analysis of the situation, previous conversations you've had with the employee, that they're aware of the issue, that they've been given enough time to improve before this corrective action option that you're taking. Plan what you will say, what you want to discuss, what your objective is for the meeting. Anticipate the employee's reaction. Has the employee been previously counseled? Will they be surprised? Well, they shouldn't be. What was their previous reaction to conversations about their behavior or performance? Be prepared to respond with your facts and to have an interactive discussion. Decide how progress will be measured. If it's attendance, your policy. Sales, the level of improvement you're expecting each month. Production quotas, what's the SOP for daily cases logged into the spreadsheet, for example. And call Frank Advice. I encourage you to call Frank Advice as needed. The Frank Advice team will provide expert guidance on corrective action and can consult with you on best practices. If you have to terminate employment, there's state law to consider. Some states you have to give the employee an unemployment form at the termination meeting. In some states, the last check must be paid sooner than the next regularly scheduled payday. At our meeting with the employee, we want to meet in private. Don't counsel or give corrective action out in the open or in front of fellow employees. Use your documentation to describe the problem. The aim is to instruct and correct rather than to punish. Identify what happened that was wrong and what should have happened. Highlight previous agreements. Outline previous steps, previous conversations you have had with the employee. You can use phrases such as, when we talked before, you agreed to double check your work so you'd not be making errors. At our last meeting, you said you understood what was expected and you were going to improve. Share expectations and potential consequences. Be objective and handle emotions, yours and the employee's. This is a business meeting and should be handled with professionalism, dignity, and respect. You want to have a calm voice, maintain the self-esteem of the employee, and respond with empathy as appropriate. You want to show support, but encourage the employee to take responsibility. You can use phrases such as, we have to figure out how to turn it around. Where do you want to start? The report needs to be turned in by the deadline each Friday. How can we achieve that? As a manager, consider, is there anything you can do to improve the situation? Listen to the employee. If they say, I think I could get that report done on time if I was able to take a Microsoft Excel course, see if you can provide that. Express your confidence in the employee's ability to improve. Take notes at all your meetings. For a written warning, you should use an official corrective action form. And summarize the meeting and schedule follow-up. Summarize the meeting and state what's happening next. If there's any doubt that the employee does not understand, then get the employee to recite back to you in their own words various important points to be certain the topic has been successfully communicated. Schedule a time to evaluate progress if needed, daily, weekly, monthly. Some conduct issues, don't throw your stapler. You expect immediate and sustained improvement. There may be no need for follow-up for those. Now, not all of our employees are going to respond with, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll do what I'm supposed to do from now on. So some behavior and responses we might see, anger, intimidation. Sometimes employees can think that the best defense is a good offense and become belligerent and hostile by raising their voice or insulting their supervisor. The best response is to let the employee vent, paraphrase his or her feelings, and demonstrate that the matter is a serious one and that you will not be intimidated out of handling. You could say, let's look at this calmly and objectively. You've had many opportunities to improve. The data supports the corrective action being taken today. I understand that you're frustrated. We've talked about how tighter deadlines make things more challenging. Let's talk about how you can be better organized. You could also say, I understand that you're angry and feel this is unfair. I'd like to understand your perspective, but it's difficult for me to absorb the information when you're so upset. Let's take a break and get back together a little later today to continue our discussion. Tears, emotional, despair. Another common response to criticism is tears and sadness, so it can be a good idea to have a box of tissues available at the meeting. The employee's behavior should be respected as genuine. Many times it's sufficient to simply observe, I see you're upset and I understand this issue may be difficult for you to discuss. Would you like to stop for a few minutes? When offered, most employees will choose to go on. I wouldn't offer a break if it's a termination meeting. Let's take a 10-minute break and then come back, I'll finish firing you. So just use it for other kind of meetings. So you could say some of the things, some of the phrases. We've talked about this before and I understand you're upset now that you're being written up. You're a valuable member of this team. You have a lot to offer if you just change your behavior. You've been successful before and I know you can be again if you take this warning seriously. Complaining or blaming. These are the employees who've never done anything wrong, but they can very readily identify others who have. It is most effective with these employees to name their behavior specifically. You could say, Michelle, I understand that you believe this problem was more due to someone else's behavior, or that others have engaged in the same behavior without consequence. I'm willing to hear more about that later in our conversation. For now, though, we're focusing specifically on your behavior. What could you have done differently? What specific actions can you take to ensure the problem does not recur? You could also say, we're talking about your behavior in this meeting today. What can I do to help you focus on how you can improve? I can't change how you behave. Only you can do that. You must correct your behavior if you want to keep your job. Silent treatment. You want them to share their perspective, actively participate, and tell you what may help them to be successful. To respond to silent treatment, ask open-ended questions to get the employee talking and provide a simple invitation to conversation such as, tell me what happened from your perspective. Allow the silence to work. It's generally uncomfortable to be silent with another, and chances are the employee will begin speaking after a short interval. If he or she does not, it's appropriate to respond to that behavior by saying, I'd like you to respond to my questions, but you're not. Why is that? You could also say, are you going to keep moving in the direction you're headed in? You have a choice. If things do not improve, where do you see this going? And finally, unwilling to resolve. You want to reach a productive outcome, but what can you do if they're not engaging or willing to work with you? It's important that the situation not go unaddressed. Some things you could say include, it's important that we reach an agreement on how to proceed. It doesn't appear that you're willing to do that right now, but perhaps some more time to reflect on what we've discussed would be helpful. Let's get together tomorrow to resume our discussion. Or, I'd really like to resolve this issue and come up with an action plan based on input from you. I need to tell you, though, it's essential that a resolution be achieved, even if it's one I need to identify without your input. If we're unable to reach an agreement, I will notify you of my decision and expectations for the future in writing. This type of statement allows the supervisor to establish that the employee had an opportunity to participate in the problem-solving process and minimize a later claim that the outcome wasn't fair. Post-meeting. Transcribe notes. Consider, what did you say or do well, or what could you say or do better next time? How did you handle emotions? How did you handle their questions? Brief management, or HR. Ongoing feedback and support. Update others as needed too. Follow through on action items agreed to, including routine progress checks. I will meet with you weekly to go over client calls. Look for opportunities to observe their performance and work habits. Review customer survey results, error rates, amount of rework, sales made, number of calls, billable hours, deadlines met. Feedback, good and not so good. If you have a restaurant supervisor you've been working with, Marcos, you've made progress in managing overtime this month, but I see you're still struggling with controlling food costs. Let's review why you're still having challenges staying within budget. Opportunity to improve and objective analysis. You need time to measure how the employee has done. With attendance, more immediate improvement is expected. With something like sales, it's going to take a bit longer. Objective analysis. Has the employee been given enough time to improve, and what are the factors influencing performance? Do they have the needed resources? They should be able to get the job done. If they improve in one area, errors, but not another, deadlines, does it matter if they take a little bit longer, as long as they're moving in the right direction? So today we learned the importance of constructive corrective action, the steps in the corrective action process, how to conduct an effective meeting with your employee, and how to minimize the negative impact on you and your company. An additional note, consider the frequency of times you're dealing with employee relations issues where the problem is the employee's lack of skill. Or is it more often that you have to handle conduct issues versus skills issues? To help with conduct issues, review your interview procedures and questions, and be sure to spend as much time on behaviorally based questions as you spend on skill and knowledge-based questions. This may help reduce the number of employees with conduct problems later in the employment relationship. Our focus today has been on solving the problem and maintaining the relationship with the employee. The thing to do now is to review your current policy and procedures, determine what changes need to be made, and then implement a theme of being focused on correcting the problem and maintaining the relationship. So let's review a question or two that's been submitted. All right, our first question. What if an employee has a job performance issue, inappropriate behavior issue, and an attendance issue all at the same time? Good question. The employee doesn't get a written warning for each issue if they're all happening in the same time frame. The written warning, if that's the corrective option you're taking, would cover all the issues at that time. The employee is responsible for executing the entire job, including the skills and knowledge to perform, the behavior to perform in the right way, and of course, acceptable attendance. Question: how long should previous warnings on file no longer be considered when looking at employee history? More than a year is the typical guidance. So let's say there's a written warning for performance in the file from 3 years ago, and they're having performance issues now. If they improved after the warning from 3 years ago till now, then you could look at coaching for improvement or a verbal warning for the current issue, unless it's a serious one. For a conduct issue already noted in the file, like throwing their stapler, if they behave that way again or any other inappropriate way, you could look at written warning or dismissal as options. Conduct issues are more serious, and the expectation is that they don't do that behavior ever again. Question: what if I counsel my employee on poor performance and then they go out on FMLA? There is something called the stop the clock rule. So when an employee returns from FMLA, the expectations are still in place. You can coach them and provide feedback and measure and give them the time and opportunity to improve. If they're out for the full 12 weeks for FMLA, they may need a little time to get back up to speed, but you can still address continuing concerns once they're brought back from FMLA. Question: if an employee writes a rebuttal to the written warning, should I rebut the rebuttal? Unless there's new information, no. Let's stop the merry-go-round. There's no need to rebut the rebuttal. You can attach their comments to the written warning in their file, and that would be okay. They're still held to the corrective action that you've done, but they certainly can submit their comments and their feedback, and you can attach it to the corrective action document. Okay, very good. I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie now to close us out.
Thanks, Tanya. Lots of great information today. If we did not get to your question during the presentation, feel free to contact us at frankadvice@frankcrum.com. For specific questions on corrective action, best practices, or any other HR topic. Remember to look for our monthly Frankly HR newsletter in your email box this week. And if you're interested in becoming a FrankCrum client, please call 1-800-277-1620. Thank you for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful day.